as it goes, out of tune, hit the wrong chord. Man, this guitar keeps going out of tune with the weather shifting everywhere. I'm not liking those. I'm not liking those D'Addario XS coated strings for electric. They feel rougher than just regular D'Addario XLs, and they don't hold their tune, and they're stiffer in comparison to the NYXLs. So I think I'm going to be going back to the NYXLs next string change. I like them on the acoustic, but man, on these electrics, they're just not feeling right. It is cold here. Let's see. What's up with you guys? Go up to the top. Hello, everybody. Hey, TB. Live in Southern Louisiana. Got a vintage Fender Champ they'd like to get checked over and serviced. I don't know anyone down in Louisiana, Southern or otherwise. I've got some guys who sent me some things, but I'm not sure if a Champ's worth shipping out. Maybe Brad, if you can see if we have any of our buds in the Southern Louisiana area, Southern Louisiana, Southern Mississippi, or close by across the border in Texas, maybe. Texas is huge, so it would need to be really close to the Louisiana border. Houston and parts east. Sorry. Let's see. Hey, Greg. Hey, Victor. Aloha. 73 degrees in Hawaii. Good. It's not anywhere close to that here. I think it's like 20, 25 here. It feels like 10. Let's see. She just ran off. Okay. The only guitar amp is a Traynor YBA-1A. It's a good amp. Been using it to play in a punk band. What? Why is my graphics so high up? That's weird. Maybe I've hit something wrong. Sorry about that. Using it to play in a punk band, but the amp has been way too dark for the sound you need. To make it work, I play on the bridge pickup with the tone stacks set bright and an EQ pedal in front to cut the low frequencies. Should you bother getting the amp modded to be brighter on one of the channels? Is there a simple way for a tech? Well, the YBA-1 is usually mega bright. It has a pretty severe bright cap on it from the factory usually. Now, someone might have removed the bright cap. I would suggest instead of the stock, which is like a 250 picofarad or 500 picofarad, 68 to 120, somewhere in that range, on the bright channel volume pot ought to do you good. Before you do anything crazy, just make sure that both volume pots in the amp, the treble channel volume pot has got a bright cap. If not, you may have some other issue, and you don't need it modded so much as just repaired. One nice thing to do on the YBA-1, the Bassmasters, is they have linear taper pots for the volumes, which mean they go from nothing to, oh my God, that's loud, really fast. And if you're playing punk, that may be all you need. But if you change those out for audio taper versus linear, a lot of stuff happening, not enough coffee, you get a much nicer range of sounds from the amp. You still have all the loud stuff, but you also have stuff that will compete with a clean Fender. Let's see, I want to fix something real quick. This is a check. I'm going to put up a thing from last week. Why is it all going up to the top of the screen all of a sudden? I'm going to have to fix that on every single one of these, I guess. Okay, things change. There was an update to the program, but I didn't expect it to move those graphics. It left my logo and question marks before the questions, please, graphics in place. Let's see, any risk, hey Sash, any risk to a Vox AC30 Custom Classic if you disconnect its reverb tank? No, it is an op-amp driven reverb tank, won't hurt a thing. I'm not sure why you would need to disconnect the reverb tank, you can just leave the reverb pot off, but you can. It'll be safe for the amp. Hey, Robbie F. Thanks for spending time with me. Why do all my cabs seem to be incredibly resonant on the low E from the B flat to the B on the 6th and 7th fret? Well, I think you probably either have something happening, it's possible there's a problem with your cab in terms of the baffle being tight. All your cabs, so that's not going to be it, and it's probably multiple amps. If you're using multiple cabs, you probably have a room resonance, a big room resonance around there. So let's see what we have here. Let me turn this delay off. Now this is that little AC10 with the greenback, so the 12-inch greenback, neck pickup. Well, not enough volume to excite the room in here, really. So, but I imagine you just have a room resonance, and the fix for that can be moving a couch, moving a bookcase, getting some homemade bass traps in the corners. But it's probably that if all your cabs are doing that. Hey, Vinicius, you're very welcome. Yeah, well, the tone stack on the top boost channel does not affect the response of the normal channel much at all. It does a little bit just because they're being mixed in parallel. So the treble pot and bass pot are in series with the 220K mix resistor. So there's a little bit of influence, not much, but the tone cut circuit makes a huge, huge difference on the normal channel. So when you saw me turning the tone cut up, rolling more highs off for the top boost on the normal channel, if I'm playing that a while, I'll turn that the opposite direction and give the normal channel more highs. Hey, Chris R. Yeah, just get Hammond or Haybor through Mojo Tone. Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I like Mercury Magnetics, but if you're not doing this professionally, you know, in quantity like I am, you're not going to get the dealer pricing. You're going to pay crazy quantity prices for that. Just look at Hammond and look at Haybor, and you know, maybe in the UK, the Hammond is the better choice for you. There's no problem building a deluxe. I'm not sure what a DL is, but you know, any of the AB763 amps, there's a Hammond that'll do a good job there. Hey, Stepford, no, it's the AC10 hand wired. The 15's in the front room. I've got a whole bunch of videos up over the last 2 weeks on those amps and making them actual amps instead of what they come from the factory as. Victor, if you've got buffering, it's going to be on your end. Exit and come back in. Sorry. Now and then Zen has been on the angle grinder all morning with pesky fret sprout. Well, he does what he does, especially this time of year. I'm glad that all my Fenders have gotten the fret sprout in the rearview mirror, and they're all stable now. Hey, Martin, thanks for joining us. Harold LaRue in Houston. There's got to be someone in New Orleans, but I don't know. And the guy, the guitarist I do know in New Orleans, sends this stuff up here to me. But those have been fairly expensive esoteric amps. I'm not sure that a champ's worth the shipping on. Octopus Ears, what's my favorite guitar? My Gibson Southern Jumbo. That is by far my favorite guitar, though it sounds terrible through an amp. Need to buy 1.8K cathode resistors. 300 volt resistors, okay. Plant pot people for cathodes in a tube stage, 350 volts are fine. Half watt 1.8K cathodes, you can use metal film, carbon comps, whatever you want. 350 is fine. There's only 2 volts on a cathode typically. 200 volts on a cathode follower, you know, pretty much maxed out. So the 73 Bassman video had 220K resistors instead of 100K to the power tube grids. What is the effect on the amp? Well, the grid leaks, you mean? I put in 220K grid leaks instead of the 100K. If the amp originally in 72 had 100K grid leaks, I changed them to 220 because I was going to a previous version of the output section. I don't recall what I did on the 73 Bassman. But as far as the effect on the amp, if you just were to take the standard Fender phase inverter and output section and change 220K resistors to 100K, you're going to have a higher high pass frequency point. That's about the only thing of note. Hey, Steve. Let's see. Thinking about changing the tubes to 6L6 in the Rivera R100 when you bring it for the speaker swap. Is it a bad idea? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, I have not tried. I don't know much about the Rivera R100. So I'm sure while it would be safe to go to 6L6s, if it's got 34s, then Paul chose a specific output transformer to work best with EL34s. And you may not ever be happy with 6L6s in that amp, even though technically it would work and technically it would be safe. The other issue is I don't know what the plate voltage is in that model, and he may be running the plates pretty hot, which EL34s can usually handle a higher plate voltage and hence screen voltage than many 6L6s. So I would say if you've always enjoyed the Rivera R100, keep it the way Paul designed it, because you've always enjoyed that, and I happen to know, Steve, that you have some 6L6 amps, or at least some more traditional Fender amps. Hey, Goody Guitars, can a transformer from an old stereo receiver be used in a guitar amp? You're going to hate the answer. It depends. Some can, some can't. I'm not a big fan of Frankensteining things from old organ parts and stereos and stuff, because there are lots of readily available brand new transformers where you know all the specs and you know that, hey, these three would be good choices for this kind of build, as opposed to, I wonder if this would work. Am I missing something? Well, you know, but you know, I'm not much of a mad scientist. I don't have the hair for it, at least not this week. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. You do this every week, and every week I say it's not necessary, but it is every week. It is appreciated. So, thank you. Who do I think makes the best Princeton reverb circuit out there? It's almost got to be Chris at Rift Amps right now, of guys doing regular versions of them. If I were to roll one for you, it'd be great, but I don't have time, and it would be less expensive to go with Chris, except for the export from the UK thing. You know, I would tell people, if I had a client ask that question, I'd say, if you can't find or can't afford a 70s or better yet 60s version, either get one of the Mojo Tone pre-built kits and let me do the final assembly for you, you know, clean up some of the mistakes, or just get a used 65 reissue and let me do the reliability mods on it and change your speaker, and you'll be thrilled. The Fender 65 reissue series is really, really good. People don't want to hear that because it has a PCB. So does a 73 Marshall that people can't afford these days. There's nothing inherently wrong with the circuit in the AB60, instead of the 65 reissue Princeton Reverb. Has a few things that get hot. I move them off the board, then the board doesn't get hot. And it usually needs a different speaker, but better to get a used $600 amp and a new $100 speaker than to buy a $3,000 boutique version of something and then have to have a guy like me do $400 worth of work to it. Let's see. Hey, Nick Romy. I've been reading about Hiwatt fixed bias phase inverter design, two versions, one where the signal passes through cathode follower and the other uses the tube just to set bias. Curious about the difference. Thoughts? Man, I would have, this is the kind of thing I would have to look at both schematics and refresh my memory, and then do a bunch of math and have some charts if I were to communicate what the differences were to someone. That would be the kind of thing would make a standalone 45-minute video maybe, but it's not the kind of thing that I can wing here, and it's not fair to everyone else who needs to have their questions answered. That's a really esoteric kind of thing. You know, Hiwatt did a lot of weird little things in different circuits. Some of it weird and wonderful, some of it just, they were trying stuff out, throwing that stuff at the wall, seeing what would stick. Okay, Sash, yeah, you got a broken tank, just take it out until, it's no problem. Won't hurt a thing. Ooh, Rye Guy, Rye, thank you very much. Well, there are a lot of techs who can work on old solid state amps, but I don't know that an old custom would be worth it. Now, depending on the custom and circuit, some of those had solid state components that have not been made since 1974. And you can end up with a real money pit. At the end of it, you've got an amp that sounds like Danny Partridge. I mean, if you're hoping it sounds like John Fogerty, but most of the customs I've actually played and the plushes just sound more like Danny Partridge. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So I think that's probably a money pit, but I could be wrong. I'm not familiar with the K25C2. Sorry. Am I in a U2 mode, playing on the pulse of the delay? Okay, cool. Just people associate Voxes with with U2, and in stock form, this thing didn't do the thing, and now it does the thing even with the greenback. And I did it last week with the Strat, and this week it's the 335, and that's just a TC flashback. With a mod delay on it, not the full rig, but enough to show what the amp is capable of. So it's, could have played Radiohead, but I only have the one pedal. And I have these hands. I love playing Radiohead, but I have to warm up for about an hour first. Those guys are fretboard gymnasts. I'll let Brad take that one. Hey, Dustin, I find EVs relics of a time gone by when you either had the stock speakers that came from the amp manufacturer, and so if it was a Fender, you're looking at Utahs and Oxfords, and previously at Jensen's. And if you're buying a Marshall, it'd be Celestians. And if you were buying a Peavey, it might be Pile or something. And so you had the choice of JBLs and EVs for this big, loud sound that didn't have any of the boxiness associated with many of the stock speakers at the time. But there's so many speaker options from all these different companies now. It's like back in the day, did you want a Fender pickup or a Gibson pickup? And now you can go get every conceivable, if you can dream it up, someone's already built it for you. And there might be 5 or 6 companies offering competing versions of the esoteric pickup. There are so many speaker choices that don't involve as much weight and cost as an EV. Given that most Fenders have fairly crappy baffles because they're just made of particle board. I've seen Fenders loaded with JBLs and EVs come in, and the particle board just can't handle it. So I think there's nothing wrong with an EV, but I think a lot of us grew up reading Guitar Player and stuff, and a lot of those guys made their gear decisions in the 70s and they stuck with them. But there are better options now. But if you want the sound of an EV, the trouble then becomes finding which EV sounds the way you want it to sound. Because I've literally played 3 Electro Voice EV12s with the same number from within 2 years of production, they all three sounded radically different. Some of them were really nasal and honky, and some of them were like real crystalline and scooped, and some of them were very balanced. I don't find any consistency in the EVs. Hey, Victor, I don't have any experience with the Mojotone Vox kit, though I know it's just the 15-watt version. But it's a pretty looking thing. What amp would I recommend to pair with a modern-day AC-15C1 for a stereo rig? And is there an attainable AC-30 I'd recommend? Can't find a Korg era on a mortal's budget. Well, you don't want the Korg era. Those are if you mean the TBX, those were noisy, horribly built things. Yes, they were the last ones made in the UK. They were made badly by people who did not understand how the amp circuit should work. They have ground loops. They've got heater traces that short to other things. The Korg era TBX and TB are garbage amps that people pay extra money for because that's how the world works. That's one of the fundamental concepts about human nature that led us to where we are in the world today. I'm not blaming it all on the Korg TBX, but it's a symptom of the same condition. First of all, I don't like stereo rigs because most people don't have their own sound man, and they don't have their own PA, sound engineer, I should say, sorry. So unless you are touring with your own sound engineer, your own monitor mixer, and your own PA, you don't need to mess around with stereo anything because you're going to be at the mercy of different acoustics every night, room that was not wrung out by a true professional, and most PAs are running mono. So if you're running stereo, you're likely just to have phase cancellation out in the front of house. That said, if you wanted an amp that would blend next to an AC-15 beautifully, a deluxe reverb or Vibrolux reverb, those two would complement an AC-15 beautifully. And then don't think of it as stereo, think of it as, hey, these combine to make a certain sound that neither one does by itself. Is there an attainable AC-30? I'd recommend the AC-30C2X. A used AC-30C2X can be found for, $1,100 or less easily, unless the world's gotten crazier in the last week than I know, which is possible. Don't know anything about Rec Pro Audio, Sun Tzu, sorry. I've not tried the warehouse version of the EV12. I bet it's good. Not the Governor. The Eminence has got, the Wizard from Eminence would make an awful lot of EV12 people very happy as well. Can I talk about bulletproofing a Fender output stage or reverb driver stage? Flyback diodes needed with self-grounding jack, resistors across the verb, transformer primary, rhythm and bytes. Flyback diodes on octal tubes are good. Brad's got many videos on that. I've shown that a few times as well. They're primarily necessary on an EL34 or other true pentode. Being pentode like a 6L6, I think I'm getting the terminology correct. It's a nice idea, but not as critical. You see fewer fiery, smoky areas around 6L6 sockets than you do EL34 sockets. But given the low cost of a R3000 or whatever it is, or R5000 diode used for the purpose, might as well do it. I don't think you need to do it with reverb driver stages. I don't do anything crazy about the reverb driver. I make sure that the cathode resistor is not relying just on low resistance to get the output level, like you would find in a 70s Fender, where they might just have a 480 ohm resistor unbypassed. So if I have an amp like that comes in, I'll change that to a more 60s thing where you have a 2.2K for the cathode, and you're getting the gain by fully bypassing the AC with a 22 or 25 microfarad cap. I don't think you need to go crazy, and there's no such thing as really bulletproofing an amp. You can just prevent the most common things, but yeah, things are going to happen. Hey, Severin Reed. Well, there are a lot of really great techs out in Los Angeles. I would suggest, for instance, getting in touch with Frank at Forgotten Gear Restorations, who drops in the chat from time to time. He's in California, and you know, there are a lot of really good techs. Colleen at what is Colleen's channel? Electric Lady. Someone will put it here. Someone put Colleen's channel name down here. She's in the LA area, I think, as well. Fazio, yeah, Colleen Fazio, and Frank, whose name escapes me right now. I've got it in my phone, but my phone's in the other room. So Forgotten Gear Restorations and Fazio Electric. Those are two great choices in the Southern California, if not LA proper. And they might be able to take care of your old HHV 800 for you. Thanks, Goody. Appreciate you, sir. And why am I forgetting Frank's last name? I just called him the other day to give him some shit about something. Let's see. Hey, Eric. Other than being cold all the time, especially my toes. I'm wearing 2 layers of wool socks. My toes are still cold. And before anyone gets in here, it's not a cardiovascular thing. I'm not in danger of having a stroke or anything. I've just since I've been a kid, I get cold toes in the winter, and they don't ever thaw. Ugh. I built a vibro champ with some help. Been debating getting a larger output transformer, adjusting negative feedback. Not sure it's worth it. Copied Uncle Doug and added reverb. Okay, well, that's cool. Don't get a larger output transformer for a vibro champ. You're just all you do is spend a lot of money, and then you begin to hear the flaws of the single-ended output section because you'd have more apparent hum in the output. If you want a larger, louder version of a vibro champ that you've added reverb to, it's called a Princeton reverb. Quite a bit louder, and then you get into the deluxe reverb and all the big brothers to that. But I like a vibro champ. A vibro champ is a lot of fun, but if I don't try to get a lot more volume out of a little single-ended Class A amp like that, because you'd end up having tons of transformers to do that, and then you get bigger transformers, and then the speaker no longer fits in the cabinet, et cetera, et cetera. Vibro champ with reverb, that's as much as you can really do to that. If you want something else, get something else or build something else. Hey, Craig, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. We've got a 64 JMI Top Boost AC30 in great condition and mostly original. Did notice that the phase inverter coupling cap, looking for a follow-up. I'm waiting for the rest of that phrase, our coupling cap. Scrolling down, I don't see it. I'll look for it next time I come around. The thumbnail is a 64 AC30 I've got right there. Frank DeSalvo, thank you. Yeah, Frank DeSalvo. That came in because I did that 6 months ago, and one of the output tubes has gone south. So I'm going to take the tubes over to Tube Depot once everything thaws out, and have them sell us one new tube which matches the 3 that are still working. Would I be able to make the effects loop quiet in my Magnetone Super 59 Mark I? It's noisy autofocus. Alex Woodbridge, I would be able to, most likely, But Magnetone needs to know that it's noisy autofocus as well. I don't like, even though I did it in this AC10 hand-wired here, I don't like fixing manufacturers' mistakes that the manufacturers should have caught before they released the product to the market. Back in the day, people did prototypes and testing, and they had musicians play things. They spent a lot less money on the marketing, a lot more on making sure the damn thing worked and sounded right. So I would contact Magnetone, especially if it's under warranty. But I think companies need to have the chickens come back to roost a little bit more and not rely on guys like me and Brad to wipe their butts all the time. You know, I know it sounds like I'm being big-headed or mean-spirited, but if I can figure this stuff out, and I'm just sitting in a room in my house in Memphis, Tennessee, and I don't have access to all the modeling stuff, and if I were working for Fender, I would have so much more gear available at all times. I have a scope. I've got 3 meters. I've got some apps. If I were an engineer working at a major amp manufacturer, I would have like 18 scopes, and it would look like a wall, like Doc Brown's lab, and I would know everything that every atom did and every electron did. But they're just kind of sticking stuff together with glue and string and chewing gum, and because we buy it, and it drives me nuts. Hey, Satchmo, glad you're here. Fixed bias phase, okay, all right, yeah. Well, the fixed bias, I assume they're doing it with a bias point, a voltage drive from like a 2.2 meg from the B plus and a 1 meg to ground, like a screen supply and a pentode. I just haven't seen that in a long time. Let's see. '68 custom Vibro-Champ reverb came in with a burned PCB and blown power transformer, irreplaceable due to non-traditional secondary windings for digital reverb. It was built in 2024. Fender. Notice earlier when I suggested to the guy looking for a Princeton that you get a used 65 reissue Princeton that I said used. I think Fender does not need to keep getting rewarded for the way they treat their customers. And some of the amps that they made that were accidentally pretty good, like the 65 series, there's so many of them available in great shape on the used market that you can get the amp without funding the current stockholders. Sepum Marks, I am still doing JMI mods, but not very commonly. That's kind of how I got known to begin with. But I have so much other things going on. I am backlogged all the time. Have ever been to Royal Studios? Yeah, possible for someone like me to visit after stopping at the four-way. Well, it's kind of dependent on their schedule. I know that you could call Boo or his secretary and see if that would be possible. I think that they do tours on a limited basis by appointment, but I can't speak for them. When I've gone, it's because I've been doing work for Boo. Did some amps for the studio, and so I was delivering some stuff, and they were about to start a tracking session, and they had one other amp for me to look at, so I brought it up to the second control room and fixed the amp up there while listening to them track down below. And Boo still tracks the same way as Dad tracked, and they still have all the burlap wrapped asbestos on the wall. It is a funky place, and some of the best music for the past 50 years has come out of that studio. So call Royal Studios, say, hey, I'm going to be in town these dates. Is there any way I could come by early afternoon and get a tour? I think that they'd probably work with you. unless they're booked at those times. And definitely go to the four-way. And thank you for knowing the code word, the four-way. Anyone who comes to Memphis, you want some real food, go to the four-way over at Mississippi at, what is it across there? Well, I can't remember, but if you're going down Lamar and you get to Mississippi Avenue or Boulevard, turn south, and it'll be about 2.5 blocks on the left. Hey, there you go, Craig. Notice that someone has changed the phase inverter caps to 0.22. All right, so I assume those are the output coupling caps. If you mean 0.22, you're going to have a ton more low end. Stock was nominally 0.15. Most people replace those when necessary with 0.1s. So 0.22 is going to have even more low end. And realistically, on an AC30 for full lows, those can be 0.022s, and you're still going to have tons of low end. That's actually kind of a mistake for modern playing, because JMI wasn't designing the amp for modern playing. This is supposed to be a very clean, polite amp, and no one uses them that way. And so it was for full frequency reproduction from the British 50s hi-fi concept of how to design a tube amp for hi-fi audio reproduction, which means it has the potential to be really flubby. I would say if you have non-original caps in your phase inverter and they're 0.22s, and you have access to a tech who'll do it for you, try 100 nanofarads at 0.1, 47 nanofarad 0.047, and 22 nanofarad 0.022, and see which if any of them you prefer. But it won't, the 0.22s, the 220 nanofarads, will not hurt the amp. They may not sound as best they can. Why do attenuators create an unpleasant clipping noise in the decay on the highest attenuation settings? Both my Fender Twin and Deluxe do this with a Tone King Iron Man attenuator. Well, I don't know that all attenuators do that. I know that an awful lot of attenuators, once you're attenuating past 8 or 9 dB, you do get some artifacts, but all attenuators are not built equally, and I don't know anything about the Tone King Iron Man attenuator. In the past, before we had all the modern ones, which sometimes have reactive loads, it was common to use the hot plate, the old THT hot plate. And pretty much every player learned that if you would use that more than 8 dB of reduction, it would get the fizzes. And so you didn't use more than 8 dB of reduction. Now 8 dB is still quite a bit. And so a lot of guys would use the 8 dB of reduction from that and a master volume turn from 10 down to like 7. So the master volume is still fairly transparent, and they're getting some reduction from the attenuator. So you're getting a little bit from here, a little bit from there. You get the net result you want without the artifacts. So I can't say that attenuators do create an unpleasant clipping noise. I have a sample size of, well, I don't have a sample size. I have your apocryphal report that the Tone King Iron Man does. And that's the first I've heard about the Tone King Iron Man. Sorry. Hey, Nizbot, I have not gotten the Mo2 replacement yet. I've got an M2 replacement coming because the 4 doesn't have 4 pre's, and the next investment I make in a bigger audio interface, I need to have at least 4 mic pre's. So I got a replacement M2 on the way, and because of the ice storm, nothing's been arriving all week. So it'll get here when it gets here. And that will let me rule out whether it's a software issue, in which case the M6 would also be problematic, or whether this particular M2 unit has developed electronic bugs, and that's the source of the distortion, which is what I suspect. So for today's stream, we're not using that at all. It's just this DJI Mic 2, which is going out to the receiver, which is up on my FX30. The FX30 is getting the audio from that. And so the audio and the video today are coming to us over HDMI, and I've got a plug-in here, which right there, which is just doing some really minor compression. You can see it kind of flashing there at the bottom right as I speak louder, and it's doing a very minor EQ, almost nothing. Just takes out a little bit of the boxiness and giving a little more clarity to my consonants, but nothing major. And it works really well for this, but you know, this amp that I was playing earlier, in order to get the levels right, so I'm not clipping the lav mic, it's actually pretty quiet in the room. Which is not the best way to hear that amp. That amp's barely breathing. Normally I have it over there at a better level for the sound, and then I have a mic on it, and so I'm able to balance things out. But doesn't sound bad. Well, speaking of Royal Studios, let's see. Well, how's that go? That's right. I'm rusty. I don't like the response of this volume. While it did really well for the edge thing, the amp's too clean and it's plonky. This amp would need to be moving some air for the speaker to open up to get the right response. Though for that sound, remembering how it goes, and a Fender would have been much better. Let's see. Hey, General Ethos. After you get your amp put together, I don't want to sign up anyone that I know for that. I mean, you could try Rick Erickson, who's in the greater Seattle area, but you know, not every tech wants to look at someone's home-built amp. I don't mean to be rude about it, but that's not something I would rarely want to be in that position to tell someone, oh, you screwed everything up and here's why. You know, you're starting from a position of maybe just having a bad experience. Which company makes the best deluxe reverb chassis? Right now, unless you're having them made for you, the one that Mojo Tone makes is really great. Hey, Robbie. In general, I'll leave it where it should be. If I have to make radical changes for a basic sound, then I know that something is, either the amp is not working right or it's not the amp that I want. Let me try something though. This thing has got reverb, which I had off. Let's see if that sweetens the deal on this. And I'm so used to playing this on a Fender where all the strings are in slightly different places. Where's that reverb? Oh, that's right. This thing's that baby hint to reverb. Where's the reverb? I wonder if I have the tank connected backwards. I'll have to check that out. It was working. But I'm not a fan of that for this kind of thing. What did I do there? I still think the 15 and the 30 sound better than that 10. But it may be the fact that I'm not really a greenback guy. Though I've had good looks with the 15 customs with the greenbacks. Anyway, How did that move up there? I had it down before. Let's see. Hey, Gringo. Hey, Rich Dodson. Hopefully I haven't spoke on this hundreds of times. I don't think I've spoken on it hundreds of times, but a few times. What is acceptable DC voltage variance from schematic? I have found most browns and blacks don't come relatively close. Well, you have to remember what the wall voltage was when they tested those. So if you say that the plate shows 235 on the schematic and you're at 270. If you turn your the power coming in with the variac down until you get to about 230, 235, whatever close it says on the schematic, and you find that you're 112, 110, that schematic was probably done with 110 volt mains. Some of the later ones were done with 117 volt mains, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the number one thing to keep in mind, that if, you know, or the other way to do it is say, all right, let's measure the heaters and turn the variac down until we have 6.3 on the heaters. That's nominally perfect for the heaters. Now, what are my voltages now? They're going to be closer to the schematic in that case than if you have 6.8 volts on the heaters, because you have 123 volts coming out of the wall. Beyond that, I wouldn't worry about, hey, this is supposed to be 230 and I'm getting 240. I would worry about, all right, this one says it's supposed to be 220 and I'm getting 230. This one's supposed to be 150, I'm getting 160. This one, and then this one says it's supposed to be 80, but I'm only getting 10. That's the thing to worry about. If they're all kind of proportional to relation to each other, if all of them are a little bit high or all of them are a little bit low, then the amp's still gonna be fine. But if these are all tracking and all of a sudden one's either really high or really low, that's the problem. The only thing that's gonna hurt is if it's off, as far as damaging something. If your heaters are too hot or your heaters are too cold, which is less of an issue most of the time, or if your screens and plates are too hot for your output tube types. And you have to look, you know, like Brad just mentioned, make sure the bias is set correctly before you worry about the rest of it too much. That's why. So you really set the heaters typically between 6.2 and 6.5 is a realistic range, but if you want to set 6.3 and then do a quick bias, and remember that Fender typically bias closer to like 40, 45% than 70. And then once you say, all right, let's say I'm going to start off at 50% bias, idle dissipation, and I've got 6.3 volts in my heaters. Now where all my voltages is at. Now then, okay, I'm within 20 volts of the schematic. That's great, is everything tracks within that same 20 volts. That's the way I would worry about it if I wasn't getting that. Thanks, Satchmo. Yeah, it's always hard to keep all that terminology straight for me, because at a fundamental level, the differences aren't that interesting to me. I'm aware of them. I know when it matters, but in terms of, I don't know, it's like I don't know. There's minutia that matters, that interests me, and there's minutia that's just something that I have to navigate around, and that kind of stuff never has really interested me that much. But I have to be aware of it for obvious reasons. But I'm not the person to just freeform rap about it. Hey, Victor, I appreciate you, man. Thank you, sir. 20 sit-ups every couple hours for the cold feet. All right, Aeroholic. Or I could just sit on the couch under 8 blankets with my feet on a heating pad and save both the cold feet and the 20 sit-ups. High seas. I almost missed one. Sorry. I keep reaching to bring my microphone closer because it's so far away, but that's not the mic I'm using today. Found a, you think, what is a late 70s to early 80s Fender Bassman 50-watt head and cabinet with a 15-inch speaker in a barn. Previous owner actually won it on The Price is Right back in the day. Wow, look inside, there's barely any corrosion. The circuits look okay. You can't find anyone to fix it down there. Shoot me an email. We can talk about it. The thing is, if you think it's late 70s, early 80s, those aren't really that valuable. And I'm not being mean about it. I mean, to ship something from southern Louisiana to Memphis, you're looking at $90 shipping each way, typically. Aside from what I would charge to bring it up to spec, you might be better finding someone locally, because you know, a 70s Bassman, any tech who's been doing this a while knows how to fix a 70s Bassman, hopefully. And it may not need anything other than just the electrolytics changed out. But I don't know every tech out there. It is kind of interesting that a lot of the times on these chats, people are always like, hey, send me to one of your competitors, which is an odd thing to ask someone who is, I guess, reportedly a businessman. I'm not really a businessman. I do this professionally, but I don't view this as, you know. But it's interesting that everyone's always asking me to prop up my competitors, which I'd be happy to do if I knew all of them, or which ones, or always knew which ones were great, which ones were bad. But I don't know every tech in the world, let alone in the south of the United States. Sorry. Let's see. Let's see. Satchmo's been playing plumber lately. The water heater started leaking all over the laundry room. For what a plumber would charge, I have a bunch of tools to do it. Again, I like soldering pipe too. Well, that's what I heard about you. You like laying down that pipe. But yeah, I do a lot of my own plumbing as well. I'd rather be a little bit tired than spend the $5,000 for someone else to do what I already can do myself. Let's see. Would it be necessary to fuse every secondary tap of a power transformer? No. Yeah, Peavey 5150 overfused a lot of things. The trouble with the Peavey is that, yes, they fuse the heaters, but then they run the heater supply to the 6L6s, which takes draw a lot of current through like 26 gauge wire on the ribbon cable. So they have a fuse, so when it does inevitably catch on fire, it'll shut itself off, but they made it also so that it would inevitably set itself on fire, and they do. All you need to have fused is the primary, potentially the B+, what we think of as the HT fuse, the high tension fuse, which is the high level DC that goes to the plates and everything else after that. I don't think you ever need to buy to fuse the heater supply, because it's really hard to find a fuse that will give you any real protection if there's an actual failure, but not trip all the time based on normal inrush current. And I've just very rarely seen a heater short that didn't also take out the mains fuse. Now, plus you can use, if you use an artificial center tap using a 1/2 watt resistor, flame-proof 1/2 watt resistor, then your resistors for the artificial center tap become fuses, but they're not the kind of fuse they're going to give you a false failure. They're going to burn themselves open if there's an actual short, but if there's a little surge when you first power up the amp, they're not going to blow like a fuse will. Which post-phase inverter master volume would I recommend for a Plexi? Matt Mayhem, I like the Larmar, and I've got a whole bunch of videos on how to install that on Plexis, on Bassmans, on all kinds of stuff. It sounds great, and it's very non-intrusive. Good luck, Lou. Hey, yeah, Janitos. People are, it's just a job. You get a job and some of them are populating the boards by hand. Some of them, the better companies, really, honestly, that have pick and place machines that put the board, everything together on the board, and it goes to a wave soldering station. That's the better way to do mass production these days. But there are a lot of the companies where the assemblers have no knowledge of what they're doing or why. They just know that that's what they're told to do. That you put the yellow wire here and it goes to here. And hopefully they get the yellow wire connected to both ends where the yellow wire is supposed to go. Have I seen a Supro 64 5-watt single volume control? What makes it different to a Champ? I've seen some old ones. I don't know what Supro has out now, but I don't recall the old Supro single-ended circuit on top of my head. Some of them would not have even had power transformers. That would make it different from a Champ. Some of those Supro designs were pretty rough stuff. Hey, Governor. Just purchased a relatively expensive power supply for my pedal board only to get hum picked up in my audio path. You're assuming it's the transformer. Is this normal? Hum changes when you move it. Do you have a wah? That's the number one culprit. If you have a transformer-based power supply, like a Voodoo Labs pedal power, which has transformers inside, versus some of the more modern stuff, and you have a wah anywhere in its vicinity, you will have hum issues. It's not just wahs, but wahs are the most common thing that picks up the hum from the transformer. But there are other power transformers, like I've got the, what's this thing called? The second. The One Spot Pro by True Tone. And it doesn't cause hum with a wah. And I've not had any hum issues with it. Second, I unplugged the delay pedal by mistake. All right, so yeah, it's not all expensive power supplies, but even if it is Voodoo Labs or other, quality supply that has a transformer, you can have hum based on the sensitivity of certain pedals to that transformer and the placement and the relationship. Like if you have a wah, don't put it on a pedal board with one of those. Put the wah to the right of the pedal board about a foot away, and then you'll be okay. All right, we are at the top of the first hour. We are going to take our first of 2 7-minute intermissions, which I definitely need to take advantage of myself. Need to get some more coffee, etc. And I'll see you guys in just a few minutes. just tuned this up yesterday. This cold is just horrible. Curious what this will sound like on the lav mic. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. That B flat major 7's a bit tricky to grab on this. I'm used to doing it on the Strat. I mean, I could just do. But I don't think it's that. I think it's that. Anyway, let's see. Rode just bought Mackie. I remember when, I'm so old, I remember when Mackie was really great. Any tips for troubleshooting and or resolving noisy power from your wall and in your house? I think honest answer for that is if you are qualified to do it, you don't need me telling you how. And if you need me to tell you how, you need to hire an electrician. Because that's some serious stuff. Things can go very wrong. Let me move this down here. And remember to sit over here. So I don't like giving electrical safety, massive electrical safety tips out on the internet, because if someone does it and does it wrong and something goes bad, I don't want to be liable for mistakes people make making changes to their home wiring. Beyond go to the hardware store and get an outlet tester to make sure that you have grounds and that your hot and your neutrals are wired correctly. You can do that with a little thing with different lighting configurations. I think they're about $5. And if that reveals a problem, then you need to definitely get an electrician out. The other thing you can do without getting me potentially in trouble is, hey, if you got noise, say you have your music room and you think the noise might be on the electrical issue. An electrical issue with that outlet, maybe it's shared with your refrigerator compressor or something. Plug your amp into a long extension cable and plug into an amp in the living room or amp in the bedroom. Find what is not going to be a problematic. If one of them is better than the others, then you can tell the electrician, hey, it's noisy on this outlet, it's not noisy on this one. And they can say, okay, this one's shared with your kitchen, or this one's shared with your laser printer or your home security service. You have a panel, those things can inject a lot of noise and things. And make sure you don't have any like dorm room style dimmer switches on your lamps, or dimmer switches in general can be a huge source of noise. And you think it's going to be the problem with the wiring in the house. It's actually all the noise being thrown off by a dimmer switch. But beyond that, I don't want to give you any specifics, because that's where you get into liability things. Let's see. Hey, Jeremy Ross, you're the guy who ran your speaker out back into the effects loop. That'll do it. Got the amp back from the tech. Apparently fired a resistor in the preamp section that killed all the preamp tubes. I can't see it killing the preamp tubes. I can see it frying a resistor. But I'm not saying it didn't kill all the preamp tubes, but it's not something I would expect it to do. But yeah, that's one of the reasons we don't do that. Let's see. Hum goes away when you move the power supply out of the board, increases the closer it gets back to the board. You could have one or more pedals which are just susceptible to the field, the noise field, the magnetic field generated by that transformer. In which case, it might be cheaper to say, okay, well, I saw already that the one you have is the Voodoo Labs Pedal Power Plus. Maybe time to try a CX or the True Tone or the Strymon, none of which use transformers, as far as I know. It's one of the reasons I went away from the Voodoo Labs one myself, though I'd used them for years, and they're still quite good in a lot of circumstances. One of the biggest problems of tone is that it's very hard to isolate each part and analyze what makes the most impact in the final sound. When I'm searching for a specific sound, how do I do? I usually don't worry about chasing exactly what's on the record because I know there's so many variables that we cannot know and that are beyond our control. But I can kind of say, oh, that sounds like a Fender, that sounds like a Marshall, that sounds like a Vox, so there is overlap between them. And I know my guitars, and I also know when something is some kind of pedal. You know, I can hear a fuzz, I can hear a treble booster versus just an overdrive kind of thing. And so that, you know, most people won't know if you nailed it or not. They're going to say that triggers my memory of that. So if you wanted to sound like the clean stuff on Hysteria, you don't need to have a Rockman, but you do need to have some compression, a lot of treble dialed in, some mid scooped out, and a pretty prominent chorus. But once you have that sound, you could also use that sound for Purple Rain, and the people in the audience would not know that, oh no, he's using the Hysteria sound for Purple Rain. They'd say, oh, that sounds like the 80s. That makes me feel that way. Same thing for if you wanted to do AC/DC. Well, I got a deluxe reverb, I've got a rat pedal, and I've got a tube screamer. Okay, let's do some AC/DC with that, and then you could also do Zeppelin with that. Would you sound exactly like either record? No. But the people in the audience would say, oh man, that sounds like AC/DC, and that sounds like Zeppelin 2. Zeppelin as well, not Zeppelin 2 specifically. You know, people don't listen to the same things that we listen to, but what we need to focus on is the emotional impact something has, whether that's sets or creates a mood or evokes memories. And so if you wanted to play the song we cannot play on YouTube, you need a 12 string, or you need like a JC 120, or maybe a phaser pedal, you know, but it doesn't have to be exactly the sound on that record. And no one will care. Remember that when you go hear a lot of these original artists, when they do stuff, it doesn't sound exactly like the record, but it still sounds like them, and it usually sounds right for the part. Let's see, take that down, so I'm ready for the next one. You got a bucking transformer for your concert, good, JP. Yeah, the bucking transformer is exactly the same thing that they're doing with the brown box. The brown box just has different taps on the bucking that it taps into. And so I think there's 4 positions. They're just 4 different taps on a bucking transformer. Most bucking transformers only are set up to use 1. Playing your Strat, watching me, and sipping a whiskey sour. Well, there are better things to watch, but I'm glad you're here. Let's see. How would I rate the JCM 800 2203 reissue compared to an early 80s original? They appear to be going for about the same price there in Toronto. Well, if that's the case, get the early 80s original, especially before they went to the, especially the vertical inputs. But the old 2203, 2204, 1987, 1959 reissues are actually pretty good amps. It's the smaller versions where they have everything done in smaller heads. Those are the ones that are problematic with crappy pots and weird mistakes all over the place. But the standard 1987X and the 2204 and 2203 reissues are really good amps, but they're not nearly as good as the early 80s. And one of the biggest problems with them, besides the way that they do the heater balance circuit, which is just insane, is the iron that they started using in the 90s and 2000s is not nearly as good as what they used in the 80s. And the 90s and 2000s Marshall transformers, especially the power transformers, very commonly get very noisy by this point. Hey, Heroglop. I answered your question a long time ago, and since I answered it, you've asked it 2 more times. So I'm not singling you out, but please only ask any one question once, because I will answer it when I get to it. And I already got to it, but because it took me a while to get to it the first time, you asked it 2 more times. You might have asked it more than that. And there have been some comments that I've seen that seem to just be comments that didn't strike me as questions. I passed them by because I trying to get to everyone's questions. If any of the comments, if there are any questions I skipped before this, it's because I did not have the 3 question marks in front of them, and I saw them just as regular comments because I'm trying to process a lot of information at once. Hey, Fletches, I'm good. I'm glad to hear that. The Custom Classic's a good amp. I don't think it's as good as the Custom, though it is confusingly similarly named. But I'm glad that you ended up in a good place. Brad says, I don't see them as competition. I see them as colleagues. Well, you win, Brad. You're a much better person than I am. No, obviously, you know that I also view them as colleagues, not as competition. But it's just funny to me that in any other field, if someone was doing, I don't know, car detailing videos, and people kept asking them to recommend a car detailer that wasn't them, it's just an odd thing. Let's see. New 84s, new filter caps, and screen grid resistors. No more hiss and sound and crisp like an AC30 should. Good, Fletches. Hey, Elbow James. For the most part, you see that I've embraced the MOD electronics. Have I had any come back? Too soon to tell. Do I know who makes them or where they're from? I imagine that they're being made to spec by some capacitor company in China. I was slow to try them. I was watching a lot of my colleagues try them. And aside from one very early batch of bad 20s, everyone's had very good luck with them. And so I tried some, and I've had nothing but good luck with them, and I've not had any failures with them yet. I like the fact that I can see that they're rated for 105 degrees. When I first got them, I measured them for actual capacitance each time. I didn't find any variation. They're all really close to the rated capacitance, which is encouraging. I've not had any problems with them. So if I did, I would not use them. But I didn't ask. I've not contacted anyone at CE specifically and asked for details beyond that. They're not always the easiest people to talk to at that distributor. Depends on who you get. What are my thoughts on Peavey supposedly getting back to their roots in the new amps? Well, they're not in Meridian, so they're not getting back to Meridian, so they're not getting back to their roots. I'm sorry. I think what that is some new management has come in and said, "Hey, the last guys fucked this up. Let's do some spin and talk about how we've seen the light and all this, but it's kind of be offshore stuff made to be aimed at the very bottom of the market, and it's a race to the bottom." I'd love to be wrong, but I really don't think I will be. Hey, Jaguar. Yeah, the ultralinear twin and pros and supers are kind of their own thing. I think they're really cool in their own way. They don't need to be black-faced. They just sound good the way they are. And, you know, the only real issue with those amps long-term, besides the general spaghetti wiring, which can be cleaned up, and the wax, which can be problematic, but that's for all 70s stuff. On the master volume, they have a bright cap. Snip out or lift one end of that bright cap. That's a big flaw in that model. The 10 nanofarad input coupling cap on the phase inverter, change that to a 3 or 3.3 nanofarad. You'll have a much better sounding amp overall. And they have a 30-watt dropping resistor, which can be problematic to replace if it needs it. And sometimes because of the mass of that and just vibrations over and heat over time, it starts to physically degrade, and they can be a little bit tricky to replace. But it's possible. Usually I'll replace them with a aluminum, chassis clad 25-watt, 30-watt, whatever, which is a pain in the butt to do. But once you do it, you've done it. It's done. It's not gonna. That one's not gonna wear out. Well, I do something even crazier on WAS than shielding to the inputs and outputs. I make sure that the shell is only the shell of the enclosure is only contacting ground at the input jack. So I will I'll use an isolated jack on the output and a non-isolated jack at the input, and then all the other grounds are steered both with shielded cables and actual wires. I'm not using the shell, the case for ground at all. It's just for the shield at the input, and that breaks the AM antenna function, breaks the loop. So it becomes a much quieter pedal at that point. So Satchmo knows exactly what I'm talking about. Do I think a bias probe tool tester would work adequately for a schmo like you that is a guitar player but not an amp tech? Yeah, get a bias right and go forth. And if anything, err on the side of caution. If you think you're at 70%, back it down until you think you're at 65%. You'll never regret only being at 60%, but you would regret accidentally being at 80%. Where was it? Removed from broadcast. Oh no, you need that True Coat. The winter's here. Okay, I'll go talk to my manager. Someone tried to sell me a undercoat dip on a car back in 1992. I said, tell you what, I'll pay for that dip if you take me to the back, show me where you, this local dealer in Memphis, Tennessee, are dipping cars into this big vat of wonder chemicals. Show me that. Show me that and I'll pay for it. Because they market it as a special service that they provided, that only they provided. Bunch of bullshit. Any thoughts on the Zinke stuff? Yeah, avoid anything that Zinke touched. I don't know about the dual professional custom. I've never had that one, but any of the Fender stuff that Zinke did, any of the Zinke era Supro stuff, I wouldn't touch it with your 10-foot pole. I take that as a compliment. Hey, Super Sean, I've got another interface incoming, but with the shipping delays everywhere, I don't know when I'll get it. Today, I'm just using this DJI Live Mic 2 wirelessly to the receiver, which is going into the FX30. So the audio and video are both coming from HDMI. So this is not a bad, I'm interested to hear how that acoustic sounds on this. I thought the electric at the beginning sounded good, but when I tried to do the clean stuff into that, didn't sound so good. But I think something's up with that. Something's up with the reverb in that amp. I might have misconnected the red and the white, which happens. So sorry, it was a fake Rolex there, Lou. Let's see. Brad, you are crazy busy, and I admire you for it. I'm glad Luke may be working out for you there. What size solid bus wire do I use for grounding? I almost never use bus wire for grounding. In terms of doing a ground bus, if I do, I'll twist a whole bunch of 18 AWG, 18 gauge together to make one very solid strand. It makes one piece, but instead of trying to solder to a huge hunk of copper, I've got pre-10 18 gauge twisted together. If I need to do that, usually if I'm doing anything like that, I'll use, say I'm replicating, a Marshall thing, or if I'm just doing like from the lug of a pot to the shell of the pot for a ground there, and due to various reasons, I can't just bend the lug of the pot over to touch the shell, then I use 22 gauge bus wire for that, or I'll use 20 gauge if I'm rebuilding a Fender doghouse setup. Same for if I need to replace the leads from the Fender board to the brass control strip, I'll use 20 gauge for that. Just enjoy the 80s, 90s Ampeg, the Rocket. It's going to be what it is, and when it fails, it's going to be more money than it's worth to repair, to really repair it, in terms of like replacing all the electrolytic caps. Let's see. It's safe-ish, but that's one of the reasons I don't like a 12 in a Princeton. The main reason is that you're not going to get the full benefit of a 12-inch speaker in a Princeton cab, because there's not enough volume in the cabinet to really develop the low end. You're still going to have relatively mid-forward kind of thing. And I think what I tell people is get a good 10 in your Princeton, and if you want a different sound, get a 1x12 external cab, plug your Princeton into it, then you have that. But you can have a 1x12 with a lot of volume around it, and so you can actually get the benefit of the 12. But most people just carve a hole in a baffle and jam it in a 12 and think it's an upgrade. Bigger is not always better. Yeah, no crackles. That's because I've eliminated the M2. And I don't think it's the software. I think I hope it's not the software. I think it's that this M2 is actually maybe having a fault in its mic pre's. And in fairness, it's on 24/7, and there are times when the fan of power is on for days at a time. So if it lasted 2.5 years before it finally started to act up, I guess I got my money's worth out of that. Brad's here whenever he can be. He's a good mate. He's a very good friend, and is very kind to be on here and moderate these for me, because I can't do all things at all times. It does sound good for a laugh, but it doesn't do all the things I need it to do. The important thing is the battery lasts like 7 hours in continuous use. So for a 3-hour stream, it is still a good choice. $100-watt silver panel Bassman. No, that's not the AB-165A864 thing. That's a non-reverb, non-tremolo twin, which is a good sounding thing, but it's not at all what the AB-165 thing is. Any recommendations for a bedroom practice bass amp? Yeah, a DI box, or actually not even a DI box necessarily. Just like an audio interface with a preamp in it, and then whatever computer you have, and headphones, and various plugins for an at-home bedroom practice amp, bass amp. That's what you need. Either that, or just get a Sans amp with headphones out. How does a Sony work as a live streaming cam? Well, I'm using the HDMI out into an HDMI to USB-C converter into the MacBook. So I'm not using it I'm not using a USB connection as a webcam, because it would not give me the control. This is not like using your phone. It's more complicated, but at the same time, it's kind of nice. If you're interested in all that kind of stuff, I'm going to be starting a second channel on cameras and lighting and audio for YouTube and stuff. Yeah, there's not as much bass with this, but I have the bass turned down. I have a high pass at all times on my regular stuff, but I do have a bassy voice. So. Not heard of a modulus kit. Sorry, Super Sean. Yeah, dimmers are horrible. Gig rig I've heard good things about. I've not tried one myself. I have one client who had a gig rig that was causing problems, but I think it was because it had the solderless cable. I think he had a problem connection with that solderless cable. But I'm pretty sure Dan took care of that for him either way. I've heard good things about the VC and LC30 Laneys. I was not that wowed by the one I had in. I don't remember which one it was. It was a blue and cream amp, very voxy, but it sounded okay. Yeah, FedEx and UPS and everyone are behind, so I'll get the new interface when I get the new interface. Considering that I have heat and power, and we have food in the house, and we're all healthy, I can stress less about, it wasn't here within 24 hours. Let's see. I've heard great things about the Seox. I've not tried one myself. Let's see. Hey, Jimmy, thank you very much. Electro Harmonics MiG-50. I've not tried the MiG-50. It's funny to me that EH is copying the MiG-50, and the MiG-50 was a cheap copy of a Marshall 50-watt made using Soviet military surplus parts. So I don't know what Electro-Harmonix is doing, but it's, it's an homage to a copy. Seems like it'd be cheaper just to build the Marshall thing. The HRDX20 I have no experience with. I don't know whether it's good or bad. Man, the PRSs that I have had in have been all over the map. The DGTs are fantastic. The Archons are absolute crap. The custom 2-channel C and custom 2-channel H are bad jokes of amps. So I don't know where the HDR X20 falls in that. I know that all the YouTube channels, when that amp came out, all the YouTube channels at once were telling you how great this is. And now, 2 years later, none of them seem to be using that amp that was so great that they all recommended so strongly. So I haven't had one in. PRS is really good at making guitars. Whether you like them aesthetically or not, they are really good at making guitars and make very high quality guitars. Their amps, I love the DGT and the DGT-15. The others, but I don't have any experience with the MiG-50. I don't have any experience with the HDR X20. Been watching me for years. It's funny to see how much studio equipment like those C-stands I've accumulated. Yeah, a couple weeks ago, I went back and watched the first live stream I did, which I did sitting right there, right where I am now. I had a step ladder set up, and on the third step up, I had a little tripod thing with my phone on it, and I had a crappy little panel light aimed at me, and it looked and sounded horrible. And now to fly casual, look like I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting in my room. I've got all these lights and C-stands and stuff you guys don't even know about, like reflectors and stuff. But I have come to love all that stuff. I've come to really enjoy all the video stuff, and I've always loved audio, obviously. And usually my interface is fine. So it'll come back. And if the new one has the same problem, then I know it's a driver issue. And I will get on the horn with Motu, or get on the horn with, maybe it's time that I should contact some of these channels and be like, hey, I've got 75,000 subscribers, and I sure would like to have some free universal audio shit. Want to send me some free shit? I haven't played that game, but maybe in certain targeted aspects, because I'd really like to have 4 mic pre's at all times, so I could have 2 mics available for cabs and 2 mics available for voice as occasionally needed. Hey, Crussell Row, nice username. 2150 JMP Power Cell, rock and roll baby. I have not encountered that. I don't know what the 2150 is. There's so many variations, but I've never heard of a Power Cell rock and roll baby. Sorry. Hey Sashmo, I've had some Marshalls with some crazy voltages, but I don't know if they were consistent or due to mistake. But yeah, you can get some crazy stuff happening from Marshall for a time. Wouldn't it surprise me if that was what the root cause was. Of the kits that I have seen, Mojotone is the one I'd recommend, and the StewMac kit is the Mojotone kit. They just have a partnership, so you can get the same kit from Mojotone that you get from StewMac. Now, I have not tried the one from, what are they called? Tubesandmore.com, antiqueelectronics.com, something else. They have another business name as well. I think of them as CE Distribution because that's the wholesale version of their business that I deal with. But my buddy Yeatsy at Yeatsy Guitars got one of their 5E3 kits and built it. Amplified parts, and it seems to be high quality as well. So I would check out Mojotone and Amplified Parts. Now, the one thing I can tell you is I know who makes the transformers for the Mojotone. They're Habors. That's about as good as it gets. I don't know who's making the transformers for amplified parts. I don't know what the quality level is like. I know that they look good, and at least on the one amp that Thsinde built, they sound good. But I know if it's between a generic transformer and a Habor and the price is comparable, I'm going to go with the Habor, which would be the Mojo Tone, which means that would be the Stu Mac. I've not seen any of the JCM 900 reissues. Sorry, Working Player 53. Hey, Freedom Grower, I'm glad that was a relatively simple thing to do. Yeah, it makes a big difference when all your grounds are actually functioning as grounds. Yeah, that's the thing. They really, I don't want to shit on the guy. I'm not out here to make people feel bad about stuff, but, he obviously took a lot of time trying to do everything right. If you look at the Headstrong amps, he tried to do everything right. He really takes pride in his work. He's trying to do a good job. I think he just did not understand the vital importance of grounds. And when grounds are made via hardware, the hardware has to be not only just tight to begin with, but secured so it stays tight. So I'm not a fan of those amps. I cannot recommend those amps because you should not need to do final assembly at home as a user. But it's a shame because he's trying really hard to do it right. He's trying. Sorry about the snuffles. I mean, the weather. It was 45 degrees day before yesterday, and it was like 3 degrees last night. The guitars are all over the place, and I'm all over the place. Yeah, I like the same speakers. I think I've got a YGM3 on the channel with a pair of G12Cs. They sounded really good. I think it's called Sunday Morning with Traynor or something like that. Anyway, it's on the channel. It definitely says Sunday, I think, in the video title. But if you just search Traynor, that'll be there. I don't have that many Traynor videos. It'll be one there. Hey, I had the V40 Duchess and Guarnaldi. I had a Duchess and another one, but looked exactly the same on the inside. It had a different brand, but a different model name, but it looked the same, just a different color box. At least the ones I've had in have been good sounding amps that were built well, but my issue with those, like most Lunchbox amps, is that when they do eventually need service, it can be a fairly high repair bill because they're very labor intensive to take completely apart to access things. Now, in the case of the Duchess that came in, the fault it had did not require me to pull it all the way apart to fix, which is good. And it was a heater short, relatively easy to fix because they were good and they used an artificial center tap, and one of the artificial center tap resistors fused, so had a bad power tube. So I liked the sound. I understand the convenience. I do not like Lunchbox style amps in general because when you have that metal cage that you have to remove to change the tubes, everyone I've had in from Duchess down to the Vox Night Trains and stuff is that they use sheet metal screws. And when you have sheet metal screws going into sheet metal, there are only so many times you can tighten and loosen those before either the screw will wear away or you'll strip the threads out. And so over time, it will get messed up. Now, if they were to use nothing but real good PEM nuts and really high quality stainless machine screws, and people did not ever strip them, then it can be more reliable. But it just seems to me not to be necessary. The company that did that right the best was THD with the univalve and the bivalve, because they had a very solid steel black powder coat cage, and then it was held in place by large steel thumb screws, like a number 6 or number 8, not a number 4 or 2 millimeter like a lot of these things are. And it had a spring, kind of like an old B-15 cage. That was really nicely done. But they're hard to work on when long-term service is needed. Other than that, they sound really good. They're too expensive in the States. Always have been, even before the import issues of late. But I think in Europe and the UK, they're much more reasonably priced, and I think they are really built and well, and they sound good. Oh, favorite radio track to play on acoustic? When I'm warmed up. I always do this myself, where I'll play something on here where I look bad in public because I'm not warmed up. Wrong fingers. Sorry. Messing up. That's right. That's my favorite one to play. That and, oh God, it really pants myself on here. Let's see. I can't remember how to play it now. It's somewhere on. I have to remember that later. I can't. I'm in a game show host mentality, not a musician's mentality. I don't switch gears back and forth painlessly. But man, that's a fun one to get. We get it down that the whole thing's on 5 and it cycles, and it's tricky. But once you get it going, it's trance-like. I love that. I respect all Radiohead, but for me, it's OK Computer and the Bends. That's my jam. Thanks, Jaguar. I appreciate that. Hey, Rob French. Switching over to your business account. All right. Let's see here. I can increase the bass in my voice if you want, but I wonder how that acoustic is going to sound back when I listen to this, aside from me messing up the parts. But do I ever work on vintage Supros? Sometimes I do Gen X valedictorian, but there aren't that many vintage Supros around here that are still working. A lot of them just kind of were let go until it was too late and they caught on fire. But there's Tanner Yates from Yeatsy Guitars. Text me right now. I'll get him back after this. Tells me I forgot my phone in Do Not Disturb. I'll make sure this is in Do Not Disturb. This one is. Okay, good. Hey, General Ethos, appreciate that. Let's see. Let Down. Thank you, Chris R. Yes, and thank you for the super chat. I see you there. Because I have the real-time one and the one I'm replying to. So thank you very much. Yeah, Let Down. Maybe I'll remember that magically during the next break. But that's such a fun one. One of the things that's funny to me is that OK Computer is one of those albums where I know every track on it, but I don't always remember the name of every track on it, because that was one of the first albums I ever bought just on CD. And before, I would get vinyl, or at least get the CD box, big CD box with booklets, the way CDs used to be, as opposed to just the CD. And so it was artwork, and there was liner notes, and there's all this stuff to read and memorize. And so that was part of the experience. And so all those albums, hey there, Tanner, all those albums, I know every little, not only just like the names of all the tracks and who wrote what, Mal Evans on organ, but starting about with OK Computer, I know the things like Paranoid Android and all that, but there are a lot of the tracks I'm like, oh yeah, that's what that's called, because I forget. Let's see. Well, no, I think you don't understand my point about Mackie being really great back in the day. Mackie, when Bob was running it, was a much better company than what it turned into the last 15, 20 years. Now, part of that is because Behringer came out and just absolutely copied everything they did and undercut them, and really made Mackie go down in quality so they could afford to be competitive at all. But back in the day when the first VLZ stuff came out, it was amazing high quality. I mean, remember, we were dealing with like Tascam 4-tracks before this. Most people in home studios did not have the equivalent of what I've got here with all this stuff. They had like a little 4-track cassette recorder, and the ability for the same price as a Tascam 4-track, you could get the Mackie with the VLC pre's, which were phenomenal for the price, and an ADAT, and actually begin to make usable music, listenable music at home. That was great. And it wasn't Neve. It's never going to be competing with Rupert. It was never designed to. It was designed to say, hey, you don't have to settle for your old Tascam. You don't have to settle for ART. And yeah, we're better than Behringer. And, they were really good. I still have a 1202 VLC over there that still works. I use it when I need to have more than 2 mic inputs at once. And I've used it on this channel, and you've never heard it because it was good enough. Whereas if I'd run anything for this channel through my old, and I had them, I had the big Tascam 4-track that was like built to be like a mixing desk with like 12 inputs, all to 4 tracks, you would have heard it, because it would have sounded like unless I turned on Dublin. Sorry, I'm not trying to argue with you automatically, Diego, but it's, I think people, unless you are of our generation, Gen Z, you don't know how hard we used to have it. Uphill both ways, used to dream of living in a cardboard box. However, I've not seen a P2P amps Uncle Larry 5E3. And Uncle Larry's never seen one of my 5E3s, and that's how we like it. We're very private about our 5E3s. On that lovely note, I'm going to go to the second 7-minute break a little bit early, because I've been drinking coffee pretty steadily, and the inevitable results are here. So let me get where the next question is going to be, and then we'll come back to that. So... Oh, Habor is making for amp parts direct. Okay. Well, I'm not sure about. I have to. Vintage spec. I don't know. I've certainly seen the specs on the Mojo Tone offered Habors, and they have been vintage specs as well. Maybe it depends on the model, but I have not looked into it. I'm not planning on doing an upgrade kit for deluxe reverbs because I don't want to deal with any potential legal issues with Fender. While Fender is seemingly incapable of making a good amp these days, they are very capable of bankrupting me with bullshit of legal issues. So I just would just keep out of that whole thing. Yeah, I love that chord progression. Let's see. Radiohead covered, Anthrax covered the bends. That's awesome. All right, we're going to come back. We'll come back to Jaguar's question about Princeton reverbs. So I'll see you guys in just a few. Thanks. It's something like this, but I can't remember the exact picking pattern. That's it. My pinky's hurting. Haven't played this part in too long. Hey Jeff. My pinky hurts and Jeff shows up right on cue. Just to make me look bad. I'm kidding, I do that myself. That's something we don't see on your channel enough, Jeff. You need to do some Piedmont blues for us. Let's see, where were we? On a 77 Princeton reverb, do I trust modern multi-section can caps? No. I always convert to discrete, and you'll be seeing that this week as if some parts ever arrive through the icy storm. And I need to move this down again because it keeps moving up. Thank you, sir. And yeah, Let Down is a great part, and I have played it correctly on this channel before, but it's the kind of thing I always have to like listen back to and say, okay, that's what they're doing, because it's not a natural right hand pattern. Your upstrokes and your downstrokes aren't always cycling the same way, and it never lines. The way it lines up to the bar line. When you get it going and you can get it to the point where you can do it without thinking about it, it's magic. But until you get that, it's just one of those things that you feel like you're never going to get. And the way I got it back when I had it down, I used to be able to play it all the time, is I would play it while watching TV, so that it was just muscle memory. It wasn't anything that I was conscious of, and just really slow. Just it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, change 2, 3, but it's in 5/4. So anyway, most of you play well enough. You don't need me to tell you how to do that kind of stuff. I gotta jump ahead because I see Brad says, I had my first customer told me what was wrong with this amp via AI last week. He told him step 1 is completely disregard everything it told him. Something that I have noticed, I'm not consulting AI, but because when I get comments on my channel, YouTube is always doing AI suggested responses that I should use to give you, and I never do. But I've noticed that some of the AI responses that Google has are straight lifted from some of my videos and some straight lifted from some of Brad's videos. They often get the context wrong, so that if you just put that in there, it's not correct. It's not good, actually good information for that context. But I'm seeing certain words and phrases. Now, there's certain words and phrases it won't use that Brad commonly uses, because it's still not a potty mouth, no matter how evil AI may be. But I have seen some of my particular phrases come up in those suggested AI comments, and I don't know whether to be flattered or deeply, deeply insulted. I certainly am not being paid. So, let's see. Towing us a new cab. Well, see Brad's videos last week, Pastor. He shows a great way to do it, as you were told. Yeah, there. You did call me, Tanner, or at least you texted me. I saw it come in, but I figured I'd call you live afterwards. Call you after the live. Sorry, I can't talk. Try that again. I would call you after the live stream. Let Down has been a massive hit due to something on TikTok. Well, that's cool. If I can learn to play it, that's great. If I have to learn to dance, I'm out. Yeah, Behringer. I loathe Behringer, and same goes for some of the amp things. What was that? There was another amp company start with a B, all Chinese generic crap. And I'm not saying Chinese generic crap because I have any problem with the Chinese people, certainly not with the Chinese culture and history. And, half the devices that we're all using to watch this and listen to each other and talk to each other have either Bulgaria, that's it, or either made in China or have parts made in China. You know, if you ask them to build you an iPhone 17, they'll build a great iPhone 17. If you ask them to build the cheapest possible thing in the world, and you don't make sure that they're not, you know, even going even cheaper than that, they will totally sell you absolute crap with your name on it. And a lot of companies are fine with that. I did get a haircut, by which I meant I went to the bathroom and used a number 5 and a number 2 and a number 1 and a no guard at all. Well, here's the thing, Satchmo. I've had those bust open, and inside were very generic caps. Some of them that just said "U." That's one of the cons, but it's not one of the good cons. It's not Nishikon. And they certainly had 85-degree caps in there. And one of the caps in that one that busted open failed. So I felt like I was paying a lot of money for crappy caps, and they were tack soldered to an octal, not an octal thing, but, you know, like they had a base that made it look like on the inside of the amp like it was real terminals with crappy caps tack soldered to that, and a cardboard tube. Ooh, the miracle of a cardboard tube, but the cardboard tube glue never set right. So I was very turned off by that. I might, that's a question for Brad. Good. Mic split 3-way transformer or hardware, which is better? You always want to use transformers to split mics if you need to split a mic. Either that or you take the mic into one pre and then you split the output of the pre, because then your impedances are all going to play along. Hey, Satchmo, I'm glad that you had good caps in the Hamfest you had. Maybe they ran out of the good ones, but they didn't give me a discount on the one that had crappy caps in it. Store the humming 5F2 SE amp again. Someone suggested adding a choke would do if it didn't change the field dramatically. But where in the circuit is the hump from on the output transformer? The main hump is a single-ended amp, so you're not going to have any common mode cancellation from a push pair or a push output section and pull output section. It's like a humbucker where any signal that's common to the north-south windings is canceled out because it's totally out of phase. Same thing with two sides of a push-pull output section. If you just have a single-ended output section, then you're going to have hum. You can. Brad says the 5F2 did have a choke. I don't recall. A lot of amps do. A lot of amps don't. The choke's part of it. One of the tricks you can do with a single-ended amp is you can give it an additional filtering stage before the existing one. So the trick there is you want to have a resistance between B plus and B plus, and also between ground and ground. So you would have two levels of filtering. That's often done. You can also just use a choke. You can use more than one choke in per stage too. There are a lot of ways to do it, but usually a 5F2 will not have hum unless you're cranking the amount of gain in the circuit. Or adding another pre, because once you have a whole bunch of preamp gain, any existing noise gets amplified. There's also going to be, in the traditional 5F2, there's also going to be problems because you don't have a bipolar or full two-phase heater circuit. You just have one side of the heater is at 6.3 volts. The other side is just at ground, and you don't have any center reference. Sorry. Let's see. I aim to disturb the force as much as possible. Let's see. Oh, okay, Diego. I'll just make sure. Yeah, I mean, yes, Neve is great. Massenburg is great. Most people cannot afford to experience that. I'm just trying to let the younger ones know that when Mackie came out, in comparison to what we had been forced to use before that, it was great. It was fantastic. It was so much better. So a relative greatness. I think you and I would agree. If we were in person, this would not be an argument. It'd be like, oh yeah. I don't think that they're going to start ripping out all the EMI stuff at Abbey Road and putting in Mackey's. But in contrast to what we had before, say 1990 something, early 90s. Yeah. It's much easier to play on electric than acoustic, and you know, in fairness, they did it on electric, not acoustic. But I was trying to remember it live for you on acoustic, and it hurt my pinky. My little pinky got hurt because I'm not used to do that part. You've got to keep your pinky anchored down here at all times. That's right. Just forgot how it went. I don't remember what it is now. Anyway, my pinky was hurting, and it doesn't do that on the Strat because I'm a lazy bastard, so which means I need to relearn it properly on acoustic, at which point the Strats and 335s and stuff would be no problem at all. Let's see. What's weird to me about the AI thing on YouTube is that there's so much bad AI out there. And a lot of the larger channels were having problems a couple months ago where their shorts would get redone automatically as AI by YouTube without their consent. But when I publish a video to you, I've got to check a box that says that none of my content was created with AI. But it doesn't, you know, I think it'd be nice if it put a tag not only on the videos that were generated with AI, but also put a tag on the videos that did not use AI, because it'd be nice if people sought out my videos, among other reasons, because I could put that little tag that says, hey, this is all real, including when I fuck up playing Radiohead. I'm putting this on the screen out of fairness to Hayseed in case I just had a really bad example, but it soured me on the experience. And I still like the idea of going ahead and converting, say, an old Princeton to a layout using a, where is it? I got one right here in prepped, ready. I get these little tag boards. I just bend down this side of them. Let's see, you can see that. So that I can put a radial cap laying here from, well, let's see. And then I have places where I can put standoffs and mount it to the Princeton. And then you can use high quality modern radial caps. And so 15, 20 years from now, when it needs to be recapped again, the tech will be able to get high quality Nishikon, et cetera, caps that'll fit on this. I doubt Hayseed Hamfest is going to be around 20 years from now. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but whoever's running it, it's a niche thing. They're going to want to retire, you know. Let's see. This was before the tariffs. This was like 3 years ago, but I was really disappointed. First of all, the cardboard cover just fell off. I mean, I didn't break it. I had it in the amp and it just fell off. And I flipped the amp over to re-glue it. And then I discovered what the caps were. And I was like, oh, man. Because I've been telling people how good they were. And I've been using them. You know, it doesn't matter if I had short-term success with them. Once I saw what was in that cap, I was like, oh, I can't recommend or put these in. Same reason I had to stop using the CE distribution caps, the multi-section can caps, because I would put them in a champ or whatever and come back 6 weeks later with one of the sections failed. And I just charged the guy to install this $35, you know, $45 with shipping cap, and I would have to eat the whole cost. Let's see. Try to get to the next question. Dreadnoughts went all but obsolete more than 100 years ago. Ridiculous. Martins are very nice, but the trouble, not all Martins are very nice. And the crappy ones cost a lot more than other companies' consistent models. What I just laughed about the Dreadnoughts with, that's an Eastman, which is about a $1,200 guitar. And in my experience, that $1,200 Eastman is better than the equivalent current production Martin HD28, which is a $3,000 guitar. Oh, you're referring to the ship class. I thought you were talking about guitars. This is a guitar channel store. So when we talk about Dreadnoughts, sorry, I didn't know we were discussing ships of the line. Let's see. Well, Martin, yeah, but I was talking about electro voice speakers. You know, it's like when I was talking about earlier about how Mackie was amazing for those of us who were dealing with Porta studios, cassette studios. Same thing for what do you call it? When all of a sudden you had a choice of what pickups are in your guitar. You could go to Seymour Duncan. You go to DiMarzio. That was a ground shift, a game changer right there. A legit game changer, not the way it's used all the time on YouTube videos to get you to click on them. Same way that Electro Voice and JBL were game changers, but now we have many other options. Same way the JC120 was a fantastic, innovative thing in 1978 or whatever, but today is not that great a choice. You have to know when something is amazing intrinsically versus when it's amazing for a time in the context. So I wouldn't recommend that someone necessarily go buy a new Mackie anything, especially since, you know, the early generation of the powered monitors were fantastic. The new ones, not so much. I would not recommend going and buying a new Mackie mixer, but if someone wanted to buy a used 12 input with VLZ pre's and it's working, there's no reason that thing, if it's maintained, can't run another 20 years. And you can probably get them for like $100 now. So they're still pretty cool. Yeah, that'll do it. Let's see. I don't also like having things on amps I work on that say hayseed, but that's because I get tired of certain aspects of living where I live. What speakers would I recommend for a 78 twin reverb? Well, most of my clients have been very happy with the G12C and the ET65 and the Veteran 30 in those amps. But I can say that those are among many speakers that people do like. But it depends. If I wouldn't say for a 78 twin reverb, I'd say, what music are you trying to play with it? Because if you want something very crystalline and clean versus something for raunchy blues, you know, some speakers will do both of those things pretty well, but you might be, for whatever you're playing, there might be a better choice. So the amp is one part of the equation. What you're trying to do with it is another part. Oh, I think the main problem with the Klon is not which diodes to use it, but you got to adjust it so it doesn't have that nasty mid-range jump up, something like that. But I don't remember what I did. I did change something. I just don't remember what it was now. I tried different shot keys and versus germanium. I think I have the germanium in mine, and that's not the problem I have with that pedal. Problem I have with that pedal is I need to look at the circuit and see if I can bypass the terrible sounding buffer. The buffer in that thing is just a noisy thing. It's not good. I need to get rid of that buffer entirely. And it's got the one I built from Aeon or Aeon Effects. It's got a little switch where you can bypass the buffer, but I need to take it completely out of the circuit and just do it as a, because that buffer is crap. I'm so glad I didn't pay $10,000 for that crappy buffer too. I've never seen an Aria acoustic that was any good at all. Larrivee, great. Eastman, great. Seagull, very good for what it is. Godin, great. Hey, TW, restoring an original 59 Bassman. It currently has J.N. Phillips 6L6 GC. Would it be worth hunting out an old match pair of tongue saw 5881s? I don't think so, especially since, J.N. Phillips 6L6 GCs are fantastic and sound great in a Bassman. But, that's a subjective thing. It could be worth it to someone. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to a client. Or I'd say, hey, you already have the 6L6s, especially with the JANs, Joint Army Navies. That's usually a good set of tubes. Live with that for a while, and if you feel something's lacking, we'll talk about it after you have played the amp. Because a lot of times when you're restoring an amp, until it's restored, until you can really play it, you don't even know what it really sounds like at all. You might have played it before, but it was never working at its best until after the restoration. So. Just because Fender used 5081s, true 5081s, not the stuff that Sovtek calls 5081, doesn't mean that that's A, appreciably different from a playing perspective than a 6L6 GC, B, going to be your choice. But the nice thing is, if you were to try it versus some actual 5081s, you might hear a difference, and if so, you might prefer one or the other, but you wouldn't hate the other one. So. Well, I don't think anyone's going to hear much difference between 80 microfarad and 94 microfarad, but still, yeah, I get your point there. Martin, thank you for joining us. I'd be just another idiot talking to a little box in front of them if you guys weren't here. So you guys are what make this anything worth being at it, if arguably it is. Generally, this, I'm glad you love your Taylor 314. I had a Taylor 500 something. I don't remember which one it was. I tried and I tried. I never bonded with it, but other people do love theirs, so good. I'm glad you're thrilled with yours. Surly, Montana, and should I give up my search for a reasonably priced deluxe reverb reissue under $900 and just get an AC-15C1? I can't answer that for you because they are, while there's overlap between what they do, and you can get great similar results with either, they do have different strengths. The reverb is better on the deluxe reverb. No shock there. If you play more aggressive music, you probably would like the AC-15 more. But I think considering how the market is crazy to make the used Fenders costs so much more than there really should be, I think the AC-15, used AC-15C1 would be a really good choice. And you probably, if you later found a deluxe reverb, you probably wouldn't have to replace the AC-15. Then you'd have two fantastic options. Thoughts and tips on the DSL-40CR. Well, initially I thought that they were pretty good amps, and I recommended them in my Amps Under $500 video. It has since come to my attention that over time, the glue used on the board has become conductive in an awful lot of them, and has led to some serious problems, and the fix is to remove a bunch of glue, which over time has become conductive. So I don't know if I can recommend that amp anymore. But you know, that video was 3-4 years ago that I made it. In that time, this has become a problem. During that same time, the AC-15 Custom series has still been a very good amp. You know, there are a couple of times where people have had problems with the filter caps in the Custom series, but it's not a very common thing, and they're relatively easy to change out as necessary. If you have a DSL-40CR, they sound good for their intended purpose, and they're pretty well built for the price. But I worry about that glue becoming conductive. It won't happen to all of them, or it won't happen to all of them within a fixed period of time. Some of them might be next year, some of them might be 20 years from now. It's going to depend on a lot of factors, so I can't tell you. Your Mesa 550 is almost 20 years old. Can I recommend a tech in the San Francisco Bay Area that could check it over? I don't specifically know someone in the San Francisco Bay Area, but there's got to be an awful lot of techs in California with a lot of Mesa experience. Sorry, Robert. My first good acoustic was a Yeri of Alvarez. It was also an HD28 copy. It died because it turns out that the guitar hanger that I had put up in my dorm room, the screw pulled out from the mortar between the cement blocks, and that beautiful guitar came crashing down to the linoleum floor, linoleum over concrete floor, and that was it for my first great guitar. And I learned a lot of things in that moment, like the taste of my tears. Let's see. Yeah, I never cared for the headstock on Seagulls, but you know, they make good guitars. I mean, there's some guitars that Godin makes that are fantastic as far as the features and the sound, but I've never liked the looks at all. Godin's always had a bit of an aesthetic issue for me, but the quality of the guitars is always been fantastic. Yeah, like don't anchor into mortar. I did learn that, Brad. Don't take really good guitars to college. Learn that. Keep acoustics in their case if you don't have total control over all factors. Is it worth spending the extra money on higher end tubes on your deluxe reverb build first off, or buy JJs at first and upgrade to better tubes down the road? Are there some that sound better? Thanks. JJs are a good choice on everything but the 6v6s. 6v6S JJs tend to go microphonic in a combo. And I've heard that the new ones with double mic spacers aren't any better. I would say JJs are fine for all the preamp tubes and the rectifier tubes, certainly. Go with Electro-Harmonix 6v6s and save yourself some heartache. They won't cost much more than the JJs. Let's see. Trying to get to the next question. Almost there. Well, happy birthday to your wife, Martin. Thank you for being with us. I know you probably won't hear this because you probably already left, but I always look forward to you being here. Let's see. Satchmo knows more about old tubes than I do. I scored some RCA Red Bass 5881 still in their black letter black boxes. Cannot say there's a whole lot of difference in them and most old 6L6 GCs, except for the Sylvania SDRs. So that's been roughly my experience, but I usually am not comparing new old stock RCAs to new old stock RCAs. I'm usually comparing, hey, this sure sounds, these old 5881s might have sounded great. They don't sound that great in comparison to these new, say, Tungsol 6L6 GC SDRs. It's just hard to compare if you're comparing new to old, because the old, usually, things happen. They're glorified light bulbs. I have done comparison in certain amps. I've done 6550s versus 34s and Marshalls, where every other thing was as apples to apples as possible. It was on a 78 and a 79 2204 in both cases, and so about the only real difference was the output tube. Is really, you could hear a difference between them, but it wasn't the kind of say, oh, that's the 30. I'm listening to the amp with 34s, or I'm listening to the amp with 6550s. It was just like, okay, yeah. The mids are a little bit different on this one, but you can't really say that that's definitely the EL34 amp. I mean, I had this set up for blind testing for myself to keep myself honest. Let's see. Opinions on the Fender Greta. Is the Greta that thing, or maybe I'm thinking of the other one where they had the preamp up top and the bottom section, the power section was on the bottom. No, that wasn't the Greta. I don't think I've tried the Greta. That was something else. It was a bad 5E3 variant with a stupid and unsafe build quality. Also part of their pawn shop series, but I can't remember what that one was called. Oh, the Greta is a little toy thing. No, I've not fixed that. If someone wanted me to fix that, I'd say no. I'm not taking that in. I'm not being big-headed. I'm watching out for people. I charge enough an hour that if an amp's not worth what I charge to even look at it, I'll tell the people that. It's not because I'm trying to save them money. If you've got a car that's worth $80 and your local shop charges $100 to put it up on the lift. Hey, TR Greg, I'm considering buying electrolytic capacitors for the board and bias on a 65 Pro reverb to install at a later date. Tariff, stock wars, trade wars and stuff. Can they drift in capacitance and reliability? If you buy the electrolytic caps now and to install them later, if later is a year or two, no, you'll be fine. If later is 5 years, maybe not so great. If it's 10 years, no. Yeah, but if you're talking about like I'm gonna buy them sometime in the next 6 months, I'm gonna install them, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Never spend money for gold tubes. It's just nonsense. Gold. When gold wears away, then you've got no coating beneath it, and then you get corrosion. And we're not talking about, oh, the perfect balance of this stereo system, or we're going to use this in a mastering lab. It's a guitar amp. Nothing's going to be perfect. You don't want things to be perfect. Just don't spend the extra money for gold pins. It's not going to give you any benefit. You never hear it. It's just ridiculous. I'm not saying that you're ridiculous. I'm saying the marketing of gold pins, the marketing of cryo treatment, bullshit. It's all bullshit designed to separate you from your money. It's like audiophile power cables. Oh, this 6 foot of power cable from the wall to my amp magically undoes any problems from the 10 miles of AC cable between my wall outlet and the local power station. It's just ridiculous the crap people sell it. And they hear it. If they spend $300 on a fuse, they hear this magical transformation. That's not how any of this works. It's just nonsense, because people always want to buy better. I want to sound better at playing that Radiohead thing. So let me buy the Radiohead in a box thing for the low price of only $19.99. Or I can sit there and practice it for 3 hours and say, okay, now I wouldn't actually practice for 3 hours. I'd have no production. I'd practice it for 15 minutes, walk away, come back 20 minutes later, play it, and I'd be better, play it for 15 minutes. The next day, do 15 minutes, and then 30 minutes later, 10 minutes. And I'd magically be able to play it every time I wanted to without spending any money, just spending some time and being honest with myself. But no one wants to do that these days when we can just buy a lifestyle. I wish this were the case. Working Player says, I think any modern tubes work fine as long as you don't do crazy stuff. But that's not the case. There's so many brands that have become untrustworthy. Like, don't buy tube amp ductor tubes. Don't buy cryo tubes. Don't spend money for Gold Lion and all this nonsense. There are only 3 companies making tubes in the world. You got the JJ plant in Slovakia, Slovenia, whoever you want to call it. You've got some different tube types being made out of China, Prizvane, avoid the tube amp ductor, avoid, which are many of them are Prizvane, and then some others that are okay. And then you got the various stuff being made in Russia, and that's Sovtek, Tungsol, Electroharmonics, and they make different versions. So if you buy the Tungsol long plate, it's different than the Electroharmonics medium plate, which is different than the Electroharmonic or the Sovtek with the long plate and spiral filaments. They are actually making different tubes, But if you buy the Sovtek, it's not Sovtek, sorry, buy the Electroharmonics 12AX7, that is a tube that was supposed to be. Yeah, they are different countries. I can't remember which one is JJ, whether it's Slovakia or Slovenia. Sorry. I grew up with the 1970s map of the world, so I'm doing well not to say Yugoslavia anymore. Sorry. I'm trying. It's hard to keep up with these things. What was I saying? the current production Electro-Harmonix 12AX7s were supposed to be current production Electro-Harmonix 7025s, and the ones which don't pass QA get sold to you as 12AX7s. Slovak Republic. Okay, good, thanks. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not trying to be like dumb American. Oh, whatever is one of those things. It is hard for me in the middle of a conversation to remember some of the changes, because I grew up learning the 1976 map in my 1976 encyclopedia, and I still think Czechoslovakia, I still think Yugoslavia, and I'm not saying that that's what I expect them to be. I understand. I'm very aware of things that have happened, but when I'm reaching for the word in conversation, the old word comes up most of the time. And then like, oh, shoot. And then especially when it's like, was that Slovenia or Slovakia? I mean, we were watching a nature video last night, my wife and I was like, it really messed me up with a kid that it was Tasmania, but it wasn't Tanzania, it's Tanzania and Tasmania. I remember that when I was a kid. Let's see. Yeah, the JJs are now that JJ seems to have gotten past their era of vacuum tube failures, which is about 2 years that they went through where they just lose vacuum for no reason. I think they had a glass supply issue after COVID. They're good tubes. But the 6V6S's don't like being in combos. Yeah, that's the thing. One of the things you have to remember is that the currently available new old stock stuff, unless it's like JAN stuff from a really good vendor, is today's high end. They're yesterday's dregs, yesterday's rejects, but they sure don't cost like rejects. Let's see. Y'all talking horror movies, huh? Slovakia, okay. What are the most reliable tubes being made today? Detroit Record. It depends on the tube type. In general, when I can get them, I like to use the Electro-Harmonix 7025s. Failing that, I'll use the JJ ECC 83s. For 6V6s, I like the Electro-Harmonix. For 6L6s, I like the Tungsol 6L6 GC SDRs. For EL34s, I like the Mullard reissues, and I like Electro-Harmonix. I'm not above some Softex or some JJs. For 12AT7s, I still prefer to get people some joint Army Navy Phillips from the 70s, unless it's a kind of crappy amp, in which case I'll use usually a JJ. Because I don't want to waste an old Phillips on something that's not going to be worth it. I know that sounds really snobby of me, but it's part of it. We only have so many of these left out there. Let's see. All right, it says Benson designs the circuits around current production JJ tubes. Well, that's because he's got to sell, hopefully he needs to sell a whole lot of amps, which means he has to buy a whole lot of tubes, and he's going to want to deal with one vendor. And there's not a huge difference between the sound of a JJ 12AX, ECC 83, and a different brand of 12AX7. They're minor ones. I don't know that you really design around it, but it sounds good. I mean, you might say, okay, well, I'm just gonna maybe use 120 picofarad bright cap here instead of 100, but then what if someone uses a different brand tube and your amp's too bright? I think some of that might be a little bit of marketing speak. But I've not spoken with the guy from Benson Amps, so maybe he could convince me in a personal conversation. But on the face of it, that seems a bit less than plausible to me. Do I remember Tanzania? Oops, I don't want to ban you. Sorry, I almost banned you by mistake. See, ban is right next to add to broadcast, and I almost banned you, Zealot. I would have felt terrible. I have to be very careful while doing this, because I could be talking to no one and not even realize it, because I thought I added you all to the broadcast. I have vague memory of that, I think. Yeah, I'm glad you're finding the same thing. Yeah, it's like, hey, they actually do what they say on the tin. I don't think they're remarkable sounding, but I think they're consistently low noise, low microphonics, and a good amount of gain. I don't think they're going to make you suddenly sound like Stevie Ray or Insert Player Here, but they're not going to go ping when you touch them, or lose vacuum, or go so. Except for, I still wouldn't use them as a cathode follower. Gooden's been out in the cold of the memorial for Alex Pretty. Thank you for attending that, Gooden. Thank you for that. Yeah, we were in a... God, let us be at a tipping point. God, let us be at the tipping point. Please let us just tip over and end this madness and get these murderous thugs out of our cities. I know I'm not supposed to talk about politics on here, but they're literally murdering people and then lying to our faces about it. And I don't like that. I like it when Indy punched the Nazis and all Americans cheered for that. I like that a lot more. Standby switches are I've talked about that. Standby switches are needed if you have solid state rectification. They're not needed if you have tube rectification. There are exemptions, but that's the main part. That's the main part. But yeah, I'm not talking about esoteric economic policy differences and all that. I'm talking about, I want the stuff we learned from Schoolhouse Rock to still be applicable to reality. I like the stuff that we learned about in the Constitution to still be applicable to reality. I'd like for liars to be punished, especially lying about serious issues. But, you know, at the end of it, at the end of it, you know, Sandy Hook should have been a change point. It certainly wasn't. So I don't know if we have a bottom. I don't rebuild pots, no. I change pots if necessary. '64 Valco twin, 2 pairs of 6L6 in parallel, 4 in total, 2 5U4s in parallel. What can make bias run away? All electrolytics new, no shorted tubes. Well, the first thing to look for is if you have a leaky coupling cap in the phase inverter. But we are running out of time. I'm going to wind it down a little bit early today because I got some stuff I've got to get to. I would first make sure that you don't have leaking voltage from your phase inverter. So power the amp up without output tubes, and check bias at the grids and see if it changes. You know, check the voltage of the grid, see if it changes over time. But I want all this awfulness to be gone from the world and from this country so we can get back to the important questions like Gina Lillibrigida or Raquel Welch. Yes, please. Like anyone we will ever meet has ever had to answer that question for real. I grab Bias Right as an example. Whoever Tube Depot is selling, get one of those. That's fine for a bias probe. I don't keep up with whoever's making that stuff. Christina Hendricks, our Mrs. Reynolds. Oh my God. Any opinion on Mesa Boogie tubes? Yeah, Brad. Sorry, AP530. Mesa Boogie doesn't make tubes. They rebrand Sovtech as Mesa. I forgot to put it on the iPad to have a little thing there for you guys. Oh well. Ginger or Marianne? Well, Marianne. Ginger never made a coconut cream pie. You know, you gotta figure out what you're gonna do the other hours of the day. God, I sound so sexist saying that. I swear to God, I don't usually sit around just like ranking women. But speaking of which, anyone going to see that movie this weekend? Anyone? Anyone going to see that movie? That 75 million fucking bribe from hell? Remember we had laws. Remember when we had laws? Oh my God. Well, yeah, we're those of us not going to see that movie are the vast majority apparently. It's been what I feel sorry for are the poor cinemas that were forced to carry the damn thing because they're going to lose all their revenue for a week or two. Oh my God, you know, they could be showing movies on that Saturday night slot and actually making a profit, but they're not going to at all. Yeah. Maybe we'll all end up in the same work camp if we're lucky. Hello, Michelle. Thanks for that. Tell her howdy hey or howdy ho. If they showed it on a plane, people would walk out anyway. Yeah, I saw that. That's a great quote. Oh my God. Lamont Sanford. Oh man. I saw that we lost Catherine O'Hara. So she was only 71. Meanwhile, we got. I'll just stop talking about it. Ugh. Stay sane if it's all possible. No promises here, but I'll try. See you guys next time.